Welcome back to my channel. I am this close to being out of the very yellow flat, so in the next few weeks do not be surprised if this background of my Victorian fireplace suddenly changes. In the meantime, I am just about done with my MSc and I am preparing for getting back and starting career as an actual full-time, or well, nearabouts full-time, as much as I can manage without, you know, making money, but so I'll need to find a second job. But anyways, I am going to be this week doing another book review. So I have 2 more book reviews left, and I think that'll be after this one, that is, and that'll be sort of the next couple of videos. I'm just gonna get those done, and so I can start back in the States with my slate sort of completely clean and ready for the next series of videos that I'm going to do. So this week I'll be talking about Sour Fruit by Eli Allison. Eli Allison, I don't know how to pronounce your name, I'm so sorry. Sour Fruit is a dystopian speculative fiction novel set in an alternate Britain, sort of northern England area, and I will give you a description of this book directly from the source, because honestly I don't know if I could go through the plot without completely messing it up and ruining what is supposed to happen with spoilers, which would be so bad. So let me grab my computer and I will read you the description. Alright, Sour Fruit, the Ink Trilogy, Book 1. So this is the book, first of 3, I guess? Duh. It's a trilogy. Yeah. Anyways, Onion is snatched. She wakes up chained to an armpit of a river city, earmarked for a skin trader called the Toy Maker. Surrounded by a creeping rot, she has just 3 days to escape before the sold sticker becomes a brand. Forced into a knife fight with a world that has just pulled an AK-47 on her, all Onion has to fight with is a sewer for a mouth, a rusted-up moral compass, and a spanking anger that can sucker punch kindness at 20 paces. She might survive, but probably not. Sour Fruit is a dark dystopian novel set in northern Britain, in a river city called Kingston, a rotting scrapyard of misery. The Voids are forced to live there not by walls or fences, but by being invisible in the new digital world. The novel explores ideas about what is home, how friendship can come from strange places, and the debts we can't ever pay back. Okay, so Sour Fruit. I'm going to give you my overall impression first, and then I'm going to sort of talk about how I went through the novel and what I think about the novel. So overall, I think this is probably one of the best novels I've read in a long time. I would give it 5 stars out of 5 stars, and that is really unusual for me because I don't tend to give anything 5 stars unless I really, really like it, and I really, really did. However, there are some caveats to that. This is definitely a dark novel. It's not something that you want to pick up on a nice sunny afternoon and think, oh yes, it'll be, you know, cheerful and wonderful to read, because it's not. It's very intense, and it really asks questions that are sort of hard for people to answer, even if the questions themselves are easy to ask. So I'm going to go and read through my notes and tell you what I thought. So initially, the rhythm of the language was sort of hard to get into because this is told from Onion's perspective, and she is a very unreliable and idiomatic narrator. She has a very distinctive speaking style and narration style, and it took a moment to pick up what she was trying to say and what she was trying to do, but once you get into that rhythm, it's really hard to stop. So the first few pages were probably the trickiest. It took me a minute to get into the story, and then I couldn't stop reading. So it was very, very interesting, and I really like the narration style and the fact that she is completely unreliable, and you can sort of take her words at face value, but there's more going on there than what she tells you, and you have to read between the lines to figure that out. So I was really impressed by that. I also didn't actually have any idea what was going on 90% of the time for that very reason. But considering the narrator didn't have any idea what was going on 90% of the time, it was a good way to sort of explore this created world without feeling like there was information that you were missing. I mean, you were definitely missing information. You didn't have the whole story, but you were learning alongside the narrator so that everything she knew, you knew. It's really important because I think these questions that you're asking about perception of other people based on your circumstances, based on where you grew up, who you are, that's really important. And so having that knowledge of, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm going to make judgments anyways, and then learning something later that changes those judgments is really very interesting, and I don't often see it done to this level, so that was quite nice. The world building was very well done. There were a lot of idiomatic phrases that I don't know if would come across as well to people who are not British or familiar with some of the less familiar British idioms and slang. Slang is tough. Slang in novels can be really well done, and it can be explained, and it can also not need to be explained, and I think that's kind of what was going on here, where you knew enough, and if you didn't know the slang, then it was okay. But I have experience with that slang, and I think it's okay that these more unfamiliar terms were used. So the world building itself was very well done. It's very much dystopic. Dystopic? I don't know, one of those. It's people are stuck in the system and they sort of have an out, but they don't really, and it's trying to figure out how to survive without actually having that out. That system is sort of examining the relationship between the haves and the have-nots, and more than just circumstance of like accidental wealth, because there are definitely people within this unacknowledged society that have more power and wealth than others, but it's not mainstream, and it's not recognized by the main part of society, which is what Onion is trying to get back to. That impression of the haves versus have-nots and what actually matters to people is very interesting and very important. Okay, as far as characters go, Onion is a very good protagonist. Her narration style is fantastic, and it's very well written, and you can definitely see inside her head and figure out what she's thinking, and I like that a lot. However, her companion, her friend, well, sort of friend, Rhea, is definitely my favorite, because she has kind of these sensibilities about the world, and she keeps fighting even though life really, really sucks. And I like that Onion's perception of her can't really, like, Onion's overwhelmingly angsty and angry attitude can't actually change that. Rhea is who she is no matter what Onion thinks and what other people think, and I really like that. So Rhea is definitely my favorite out of all of them. I like her a lot. And the ending of the book, oh my goodness, the ending of the book is very dramatic, and honestly, I think the pace picked up a lot within the last, I want to say 50 pages of the novel. I was reading this on EPUB just for iBooks, and it picked up a lot. It was very much faster, but that's because events were happening, and the characters didn't have enough downtime to sort of process these events, but that was okay because they had already processed previous events and this was coming to a head, and it was very dramatic. However, it was a lot harder to visualize the ending because I think it moved so quickly. Now, it was a good ending, and I think that fast-paced motion was necessary, but I did have a harder time visualizing it. And the very end of the book, I was a little bit confused, but now that I realize it's a trilogy, that makes far more sense. There's more to come, and I need to find out what that is. So definitely the themes, I would agree with the description. It's about finding kind of your own family, and not necessarily those that you're born with or those that you think you should be with, but it's who you actually get stuck with, and finding family in spite of difficult circumstances. And you don't always like your family, but you know that they are your family, and I like that a lot. I will give you a warning, this book does have a fair bit of language and violence into it. This is not for the faint of heart. It is very... Onion is a very sort of crass narrator. She's trying to fight back against the system and fight back against the world in the only way that she knows how, and that can translate into a lot of bad language. And honestly, I mean, it makes perfect sense and it fits very well with the story, but if you're not into that, be forewarned. And as far as the violence goes, it's definitely present, but again, I think it makes sense, and it's not, well, okay, any violence is going to be unnecessary to some extent, but I think it makes the world a little bit more real and more interesting. If you're not into gore and violence, don't read this. It is not explicit. There are no descriptions of arteries being cut open and a person bleeding out in explicit detail like you would be watching it in a horror movie. I don't know how to describe it. This book is it kind of goes beyond the boundaries of your normal dystopian novel, and so just be aware that it's there. However, between the language and the violence, I still really liked this book, and I don't normally go for books with that in it. So I think it was okay. I think it was good. Overall, I would say this book is definitely 5 stars. And now that I know it's a trilogy, I'm gonna have to wait for the next books, so that's gonna be a thing. If you're interested in dystopian kind of novels trying to fight against the system, this is definitely for you, and I would highly recommend it. It's not something that you would necessarily, or that I would necessarily pick up as I was browsing through a bookstore and looking for something that would make me feel good. It makes you think, and honestly, when it comes to books, I think that's really important. So this makes you think, and I really liked it. There were a lot of questions that were sort of more subtle than you thought they would be, and answers that were a lot more subtle, and honestly, it's just, there were some really cute moments as well, like the whole peacocking scene. Spoilers if if you haven't read the book, I won't go into any more details, but I think that was very sweet. There are definitely characters that I really liked a lot, more than just Onion and Rhea, the two main protags. So I would highly recommend it. If you're not interested in crass language and violence, be aware that this does have both, but I think it has a place here, and there's no explicit sexual content, it's implied, but just if you're curious about that, be aware of that. So yes. That was Sour Fruit. I will link all of the author's wonderful websites and places where you can buy this book and social media in the description box. And if you're interested in having your book reviewed, please let me know. I will be compiling a list to start doing this more regularly when I get back to the States. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this book, and I hope you go and pick it up too. Yes. Anyways, have a good day. Bye.